12-year-old girl gave birth to alien-looking baby. How did this happen? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. Clara had always been an unassuming girl. Quiet, studious, and small for her age, she spent most of her time reading or drawing in the corner of her bedroom. At 12 years old, she was still a child in many ways, her biggest concerns revolving around schoolwork and whether her single mother, Anna, would make her favorite spaghetti for dinner. Life in their small town was slow and predictable until the day Clara collapsed during school recess. It started with a strange dizziness. Clara had been standing near the edge of the playground, watching her classmates play kickball, when the world around her began to tilt. She pressed a hand to her stomach, wincing at an unfamiliar pain that felt sharp yet distant, like it wasn't entirely her own. Before she could cry out, her legs gave way, and she crumpled to the ground. The school nurse called Anna in a panic, her voice trembling as she described Clara's condition. "She's unconscious, and her pulse is erratic. You need to get her to the hospital right away." By the time Anna arrived, Clara had regained consciousness but was pale and visibly shaking. Anna wrapped her arms around her daughter, fear clawing at her chest. "What's wrong, sweetheart? Did you fall? Did you hit your head?" Clara shook her head weakly. "No. My stomach hurts so bad." Anna rushed her to the nearest hospital, her heart pounding as she sped through the quiet streets. Clara whimpered softly in the passenger seat, clutching her stomach, and Anna couldn't help but glance at her every few seconds, searching for answers in her pale, sweat-drenched face. When they arrived at the hospital, the ER staff sprang into action. Clara was wheeled into an examination room while Anna filled out paperwork, her hands trembling as she scribbled down Clara's information. A nurse took her blood pressure, while a doctor palpated her abdomen and asked a flurry of questions. "Has she been sick recently? Any fevers? Vomiting?" Anna shook her head. "Nothing out of the ordinary. She's always been healthy." The doctor frowned, his gloved hands pressing gently against Clara's stomach. "Her abdomen is unusually firm. We'll need to run some tests." What happened next blurred together in Anna's mind. The ultrasound machine wheeled into the room, the faint sound of murmurs as the technician examined the screen, and then the doctor's stunned expression as he turned to Anna. "Ms. Adams," he began cautiously, his voice low, "this might sound impossible, but your daughter appears to be in labor." The words hit Anna like a physical blow. She blinked, certain she'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" "She's in active labor," the doctor repeated. "There's a fetus. We need to deliver it immediately." Anna stumbled back, shaking her head. "Oh, that's not possible. She's 12. She's never. This has to be a mistake." The doctor placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "I understand this is shocking, but there's no time to waste. Her body is under immense stress, and the baby needs to come out now." Anna felt the room spin around her as she tried to process the impossible. Meanwhile, Clara lay on the bed, her breathing ragged. "Mom," she whimpered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "What's happening to me?" Anna forced herself to take a deep breath and knelt beside her daughter. "It's going to be okay, sweetheart. I won't let anything happen to you." Within minutes, Clara was prepped for delivery. A team of nurses and doctors surrounded her, their faces a mixture of professionalism and disbelief. Anna held Clara's hand tightly, whispering reassurances even as her own mind raced with questions. The delivery was quick but excruciating. Clara cried out in pain, her small frame trembling with the effort. Anna's heart broke as she watched her daughter endure something no 12-year-old should ever have to face. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it was over. A sharp, piercing cry filled the room. But it wasn't the cry of a normal baby. The room fell silent as everyone turned to look at the newborn. One of the nurses, holding the baby in a blanket, froze mid-step, her face pale. "Doctor, you need to see this." The doctor stepped forward, and even he couldn't hide his shock. The baby was unlike anything they had ever seen. Its skin was pale and translucent, with veins visible beneath the surface. Its eyes were large and dark, taking up most of its small, oval-shaped face. Its limbs were long and thin, ending in delicate, almost claw-like fingers. "What is that?" one of the nurses whispered, her voice trembling. Anna's breath caught in her throat as she glimpsed the baby for the first time. It didn't look human, at least, not entirely. But what terrified her even more was the way Clara reached out for it, her expression softening. "Give him to me," Clara said, her voice weak but insistent. The doctor hesitated, glancing at Anna for guidance. Anna didn't know what to say. She was too stunned to speak, too overwhelmed to comprehend what was happening. Finally, the doctor nodded to the nurse, who reluctantly placed the baby in Clara's arms. As soon as the baby touched her, Clara's trembling stopped. She cradled it gently, her expression a mix of fear and wonder. "It's okay," she whispered to the baby, her voice soothing. "I've got you." Anna stared at her daughter, torn between disbelief and a maternal instinct to protect her. "Clara, what's going on? How is this possible?" Clara looked up at her mother, her eyes wide and filled with tears. "I don't know, Mom. But he's mine. I can feel it." The medical staff exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of what to do. The doctor cleared his throat, his professional demeanor slipping. "We need to run tests on both of them. This is beyond anything we've ever encountered." Anna nodded numbly, unable to tear her eyes away from the baby in Clara's arms. The child's dark eyes seemed to study its surroundings with an unsettling intelligence, its tiny chest rising and falling with each shallow breath. The tests began immediately. Blood samples were taken, ultrasounds performed, and specialists called in from neighboring hospitals. The results only deepened the mystery. The baby's DNA showed markers that were unrecognizable, with sequences that didn't match anything in the human genome. Even more baffling, Clara's own DNA showed subtle anomalies that had gone unnoticed until now. By the time the tests were complete, the hospital was swarming with government officials and scientists. Clara and the baby were moved to a secure wing, where they were closely monitored. Anna stayed by her daughter's side, refusing to leave her for even a moment. As the hours turned into days, the outside world began to take notice. News of the strange birth leaked, and reporters camped outside the hospital, clamoring for information. The small town buzzed with rumors, ranging from alien abductions to secret government experiments. Clara's classmates, once her friends, whispered cruel things about her, calling her a freak and worse. Through it all, Clara clung to her baby. She named him Luca, a name that felt right even if she didn't know why. Despite his alien appearance, she loved him fiercely. And as the days passed, it became clear that Luca wasn't an ordinary child. Luca grew rapidly, his fragile frame gaining strength and coordination at an astonishing rate. By the end of the first week, he could hold his head up and make cooing sounds that almost sounded like words. Clara watched him with awe, her initial fear replaced by an unshakable sense of connection. But as much as Clara loved her son, she couldn't shake the feeling that their time together was running out. The scientists and officials who observed them were becoming more insistent, their questions more invasive. They didn't see Luca as a baby, they saw him as a specimen, something to be studied and dissected. One night, as Clara lay in her hospital bed with Luca asleep in her arms, Anna sat beside her, stroking her hair. "We'll figure this out," Anna said softly. "No matter what, I'll protect you both." Clara looked up at her mother, her voice trembling. "What if we can't? What if they take him away?" Anna's heart broke at the fear in her daughter's eyes. She didn't have an answer, but she knew one thing for certain: she would do whatever it took to keep her family together. As the days stretched into weeks, the hospital became both a sanctuary and a prison for Clara and Luca. Scientists, doctors, and government officials swarmed the facility, all desperate to understand what had happened. To Clara, however, Luca wasn't a mystery to solve. He was her son, and she would do anything to protect him. Luca's growth was nothing short of astonishing. Within 2 weeks, he resembled a toddler, his movements more fluid, his large, dark eyes scanning his surroundings with an intensity that unnerved even the most seasoned researchers. His translucent skin began to develop a faint glow under certain lights, further emphasizing how different he was. Despite this, Clara's bond with him only deepened. Every day, she would hold him, talk to him, and sing lullabies. To everyone else, he was an enigma. To Clara, he was perfect. One evening, Clara sat on her hospital bed, cradling Luca as Anna flipped through a thick stack of legal documents on the table. The government had sent their latest set of demands earlier that day, detailing the custodial rights they intended to claim over Luca for the sake of national security. Anna slammed the papers onto the table, her frustration boiling over. "They're trying to take him away, Clara. They're not even hiding it anymore." Clara tightened her grip on Luca, her heart pounding. "They can't. He's mine. They can't take him." Anna moved closer, kneeling beside Clara. "Sweetheart, I promise I'll fight this with everything I have. But these people, they're powerful. They don't care about laws or what's right. They care about control." Clara's voice cracked as tears welled in her eyes. "What do we do, Mom? How do we stop them?" Anna wrapped her arms around Clara and Luca, pulling them close. "We'll figure it out. I won't let them take him. I won't let them take you." The tension between the hospital staff and the government agents escalated as Luca's abilities began to emerge. On his third week of life, he spoke his first word, not mama or dada, but a single, haunting syllable that no one could interpret. The sound seemed to reverberate through the air, causing the lights in the room to flicker. Clara swore she felt a surge of warmth in her chest when he said it, as though the word was meant for her alone. The scientists were ecstatic, their theories spiraling into increasingly wild territory. Some believed Luca was proof of extraterrestrial life, a hybrid born of some unknown encounter. Others speculated that his unique DNA was the result of genetic manipulation, perhaps a government experiment gone awry. Clara didn't care about their theories. All she knew was that Luca was her son, and he needed her. The breaking point came when Clara overheard two scientists discussing their plans to remove Luca from her care. She had stepped out of her room for fresh air when their voices drifted through an open door. "The higher-ups want to move the specimen to a secure facility," one of them said. "The mother's attachment is complicating things," the other replied. "We'll have to sedate her if she resists." Clara's stomach twisted in fear. She hurried back to her room, her mind racing. When she burst through the door, Anna immediately noticed the panic in her daughter's eyes. "What happened?" Anna asked, standing up. "They're going to take him," Clara whispered, her voice trembling. "They're going to take Luca away." Anna's jaw tightened. "Over my dead body." Clara clutched Luca to her chest, her heart pounding. "Mom, we have to leave. We can't stay here. They'll never stop." Anna nodded, her resolve hardening. "You're right. We'll leave tonight." That night, under the cover of darkness, Clara and Anna made their escape. Anna had spent the past week quietly gathering supplies and identifying the hospital's weak points. With the help of a sympathetic nurse who had grown attached to Clara and Luca, they managed to slip past security and out of the building. Clara held Luca tightly as they ran through the parking lot, her heart pounding in her ears. Every shadow felt like a threat, every sound a warning. Anna led the way, her determination unmatched. They reached Anna's car, a beat-up sedan that she had parked far from the hospital's main entrance. As soon as they were inside, Anna started the engine and sped off into the night. "Where are we going?" Clara asked, her voice shaky. "Somewhere safe," Anna replied. "I have a friend who can help us." Clara didn't ask for details. She trusted her mother completely. Anna's friend, Dr. Evelyn Harper, was a retired geneticist who lived in a secluded cabin deep in the woods. She and Anna had met years ago when Evelyn was working on a research project involving rare genetic mutations. When Anna explained their situation over the phone, Evelyn agreed to help without hesitation. The drive to Evelyn's cabin took hours, and by the time they arrived, the sun was beginning to rise. Clara was exhausted, but the sight of the cozy cabin nestled among the trees filled her with a small measure of hope. Evelyn greeted them at the door, her sharp eyes immediately landing on Luca. "So this is the little miracle," she said, her tone a mix of awe and curiosity. Clara bristled at the word miracle. To her, Luca wasn't a phenomenon, he was her baby. But Evelyn's warm smile and gentle demeanor quickly put her at ease. Over the next few days, Evelyn ran her own tests on Luca and Clara, working tirelessly to unravel the mystery of their connection. Unlike the scientists at the hospital, Evelyn treated Luca with care and respect, often pausing to coo at him or play with his tiny fingers. "It's remarkable," Evelyn said one evening as she examined her findings. "Luca's DNA is unlike anything I've ever seen. But what's even more fascinating is that Clara's DNA has traces of the same anomalies. They've been dormant until now." "What does that mean?" Clara asked, holding Luca on her lap. Evelyn hesitated, her brow furrowing. "It means that whatever makes Luca special didn't come from nowhere. It came from you." Clara's breath caught in her throat. "From me? How?" Evelyn leaned forward, her expression serious. "I don't know for sure. But if I had to guess, I'd say your DNA was altered at some point, maybe even before you were born." Anna frowned. "Are you saying someone did this to her?" Evelyn nodded. "It's possible. Or it could be something less intentional. An environmental factor, an unknown event. Either way, it's in Clara's DNA, and it's what allowed Luca to be born." Clara looked down at Luca, who gazed back at her with his large, dark eyes. For the first time, she felt a flicker of understanding. She wasn't just his mother, she was the key to his existence. As days turned into weeks, Clara grew stronger, both physically and emotionally. With Evelyn's guidance, she began to understand her connection to Luca and the role she would need to play in protecting him. The outside world still loomed like a storm cloud, but for now, they were safe. One night, as Clara sat by the fireplace with Luca in her arms, Anna joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "You're amazing, you know that?" Anna said softly. Clara smiled, her eyes glistening. "I'm just doing what I have to." "No," Anna said firmly. "You're doing so much more. You're brave, Clara. And no matter what happens, I'm proud of you." Clara leaned into her mother's embrace, the warmth of the fire and her mother's love filling her with a sense of peace she hadn't felt in weeks. But deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. The world wasn't ready for Luca, or for her. And sooner or later, they would have to face it again. The weeks at Dr. Evelyn Harper's cabin passed in a mix of quiet reprieve and uneasy preparation. Though the wooded seclusion provided temporary safety, Clara, Anna, and Evelyn all knew it was only a matter of time before someone came looking for them. For now, they focused on understanding Luca and preparing for what lay ahead. Luca continued to grow and develop at an astonishing rate. By the 4th week, he resembled a 5-year-old human child, though his features still bore the alien characteristics that made him so unique. His translucent skin became more opaque but retained a faint luminescence in dim light. His large eyes glistened with an otherworldly awareness, and his cognitive abilities far exceeded his apparent age. What fascinated Evelyn the most, however, was Luca's ability to communicate. Though his verbal skills were limited, he had developed a unique way of projecting emotions and images into Clara's mind. At first, it happened sporadically. Clara would suddenly feel a wave of warmth or see fleeting images of the stars. But over time, the connection grew stronger. One evening, as Clara sat on the porch with Luca beside her, she felt a strange sensation ripple through her chest. It wasn't unpleasant, but it was unlike anything she'd ever experienced. She looked at Luca, who was staring at her intently. "What is it, Luca?" she asked softly. He tilted his head, and suddenly, Clara's mind was flooded with vivid images. A vast, starry expanse, a planet bathed in shimmering light, and beings that looked both familiar and foreign. She gasped, clutching the armrest of the chair as the images faded. "Did you do that?" she asked, her voice trembling. Luca nodded, his expression calm but serious. He reached out and placed a small hand on hers. Clara felt another wave of emotion wash over her. This time, a mixture of comfort and urgency. Clara turned to her mother and Evelyn, who had been sitting inside but had rushed out when they saw her reaction. "He showed me something," Clara said, her voice shaky but resolute. "I think he's trying to tell us where he came from." Evelyn knelt beside Clara, her scientific curiosity alight. "What did you see?" Clara described the images as best as she could, though words seemed inadequate to capture the depth and detail of what Luca had shared. Evelyn listened intently, nodding as Clara spoke. "It sounds like he's trying to establish a deeper connection with you," Evelyn said. "It's extraordinary. His mind is far more advanced than we imagined." Anna, however, was less focused on the scientific implications. What does this mean for us? If Luca's trying to tell us something, does that mean someone or something might be looking for him? The question hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Luca looked up at Anna, his dark eyes glistening with what Clara could only describe as understanding. He reached out and touched Anna's hand, and for a brief moment, she felt the same wave of emotion Clara had described. It was as if Luca was telling her not to be afraid. The next morning, Evelyn proposed conducting an experiment to see if Luca could communicate more deliberately. She set up a small room with minimal distractions and asked Clara to sit with Luca while wearing a device designed to monitor brain activity. As the experiment began, Clara closed her eyes, focusing on Luca's presence. He reached out to her, and once again, images began to flood her mind. This time, however, they were clearer and more coherent. She saw flashes of Luca's birth, his rapid growth, and then something new, a shimmering vessel, almost like a spaceship, hovering above a field of flowers. Evelyn watched the monitor in awe as Clara's brain activity spiked, displaying patterns she had never seen before. "It's incredible," she whispered. "Their connection is unlike anything I've studied. It's almost as if they're sharing a single consciousness." When the session ended, Clara opened her eyes, her face pale but determined. "I think he's trying to tell us that he didn't come here by accident. Someone sent him." Anna's face tightened with worry. "If that's true, then whoever sent him might come back. And we don't know if they'll be friendly." Evelyn placed a reassuring hand on Anna's shoulder. "Let's not jump to conclusions. For now, we need to focus on understanding Luca and preparing for any possibility." As the days went on, the group began to make contingency plans. Evelyn worked tirelessly to create a secure space in case they needed to hide, while Anna stocked up on supplies. Clara, meanwhile, spent most of her time with Luca, deepening their bond and learning to interpret his nonverbal communication. One night, as Clara lay in bed with Luca beside her, she felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't afraid. Instead, she felt a quiet determination, a certainty that no matter what happened, she would protect Luca with everything she had. "Luca," she whispered, stroking his hair, "if someone's looking for you, we'll figure it out together. I promise." Luca looked up at her, his expression serene. He reached out and touched her face, and once again, Clara felt a surge of emotion. This time, a profound sense of gratitude and love. But their fragile peace was shattered the following morning. Evelyn had gone into town to gather more supplies, leaving Anna, Clara, and Luca at the cabin. They were sitting at the breakfast table when Anna's phone buzzed with an alert. She glanced at the screen and froze. "What is it, Mom?" Clara asked, her stomach tightening. Anna turned the phone toward Clara, her face pale. The screen displayed a breaking news headline: "Authorities seek mother and alien child in national security case." The article included blurry photos of Clara and Luca leaving the hospital, along with a warning to the public to report any sightings. "They know," Anna said, her voice trembling. "They know we're here." Clara's heart raced as she held Luca tightly. "What do we do?" Before Anna could respond, the sound of approaching helicopters filled the air. The cabin shook as the rotor blades grew louder, and Clara's fear turned to panic. "We have to go," Anna shouted, grabbing the bag of supplies they had prepared for emergencies. Clara clutched Luca as Anna led them out the back door and into the woods. The trees provided some cover, but the sound of helicopters and barking dogs grew closer with each passing second. Evelyn's cabin had been their sanctuary, but now it was clear that nowhere was safe. As they ran deeper into the forest, Clara felt a wave of despair. How could they escape when the entire world seemed to be hunting them? But then Luca did something extraordinary. He stopped running and turned to face the helicopters. Clara cried out, trying to pull him back, but he stood firm, his small frame radiating an unearthly glow. The light grew brighter and brighter until it enveloped the entire area, forcing Clara and Anna to shield their eyes. When the light faded, the helicopters were gone, and the forest was silent. Clara stared at Luca, her heart pounding. What did you do?" Luca looked up at her, his expression calm but weary. Clara felt a familiar wave of emotion wash over her. This time, a message of safety and reassurance. Anna stepped forward, her voice shaking. "He saved us." Clara knelt beside Luca, tears streaming down her face. "You're amazing," she whispered. "You're so much more than I ever imagined." Luca reached out and touched her face, and once again, Clara felt the depth of his love. In that moment, she knew that no matter what happened next, they would face it together. The forest was quiet, unnervingly so, in the aftermath of Luca's display of power. Clara, Anna, and Luca remained frozen for a moment, their breaths mingling in the stillness as the faint glow surrounding Luca slowly faded. The reality of what had just happened hung heavy in the air. Anna was the first to break the silence. "We need to keep moving," she said, her voice low but firm. "That light, whatever it was, it might have stopped them for now, but they'll come back. They always do." Clara nodded, holding Luca close to her chest. He seemed tired, his head resting against her shoulder, but his large, dark eyes were still alert, scanning their surroundings with an eerie calmness. She kissed the top of his head, whispering, "Thank you," though she wasn't sure if he understood the words or simply felt the gratitude radiating from her. As they pressed deeper into the woods, Anna led the way, her sharp instincts honed from years of protecting Clara as a single mother. She moved quickly but carefully, scanning for paths that would be difficult to track. The forest was dense, its towering trees providing a natural canopy, but Clara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. By nightfall, they reached a small clearing near a stream. Anna decided it was safe enough to stop for a while. She unpacked a few supplies, a blanket, some water, and the emergency rations they had prepared weeks ago. Clara sat down on the blanket, cradling Luca in her lap. He was quiet, his energy seemingly drained, but his presence was a source of comfort. "Mom," Clara said softly, looking up at Anna. "Do you think they'll find us again?" Anna crouched beside her daughter, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Not tonight. We've put some distance between us and them. And if we stay smart, we'll stay ahead." Clara nodded, though the weight of their situation pressed heavily on her. She glanced down at Luca, who was now fast asleep, his small chest rising and falling rhythmically. Even in sleep, he seemed otherworldly, his translucent skin catching the faint light of the moon. "Why did he do that?" Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why did he stop them?" Anna sighed, settling onto the ground beside Clara. "Because he knows what's at stake. He might not be like us, but he understands more than we think." Clara looked at her mother, her eyes filled with both fear and determination. "We can't keep running forever." Anna's expression softened, and she pulled Clara into a hug. "I know, sweetheart. But right now, running is the only way to keep you both safe." As they rested, the night carried a strange stillness, broken only by the rustling of leaves and the soft gurgle of the stream. Clara lay awake, her mind racing with questions she couldn't answer. Who had sent Luca? Why did he have these powers? And, perhaps most terrifying of all, what would happen if those hunting them ever caught up? The images Luca had shared with her earlier, the shimmering vessel, the vast starscape, played over and over in her mind. She had felt something in those moments, a connection that went beyond words or logic. It was as if Luca had shown her a glimpse of his purpose, though she still couldn't fully grasp what it was. As the first rays of dawn began to break through the trees, Clara sat up, careful not to wake Luca. Anna was already awake, sitting by the stream and sharpening a makeshift spear she had fashioned from a sturdy branch. "We should start moving soon," Anna said without looking up. "If they've regrouped, they'll be searching by daylight." Clara nodded, gently waking Luca. He stirred, his eyes fluttering open as he looked up at her. For a moment, he simply stared, and Clara felt the now familiar wave of emotion wash over her, a mix of trust, love, and something deeper, almost like resolve. As they moved through the forest, Luca's energy seemed to return. He walked beside Clara, his small hand gripping hers tightly. Every so often, he would stop, tilting his head as if listening to something only he could hear. Clara and Anna quickly learned to trust his instincts. Whenever Luca hesitated, it was usually because danger was nearby. By midday, they came across an abandoned cabin deep in the woods. It was small and dilapidated, the roof partially caved in, but it offered shelter and a momentary reprieve. Anna checked the perimeter, ensuring there were no signs of recent activity, before leading Clara and Luca inside. The interior was sparse, with only a few pieces of broken furniture and a faint smell of mildew. Anna set about making the space as comfortable as possible, while Clara sat with Luca in a corner, whispering to him. "Do you think we're safe here?" Clara asked, though she wasn't sure if Luca could answer. Luca tilted his head, his large eyes meeting hers. She felt the now familiar ripple of communication, a subtle mix of caution and reassurance. It wasn't a definitive answer, but it was enough to ease her anxiety, if only slightly. As night fell once again, Clara and Anna discussed their next steps. Anna suggested heading toward the mountains, where the terrain would be more difficult to navigate but offer better chances of evasion. Clara, however, hesitated. "Mom," she said quietly, "what if running isn't the answer? What if Luca wants to go back to where he came from?" Anna's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Clara explained the images Luca had shared with her. The vessel, the stars, the overwhelming sense that he didn't belong on Earth. What if we're trying to keep him safe when what he really needs is to go home? Anna was silent for a long moment, her gaze shifting to Luca, who was sitting near the window and staring up at the night sky. "And how do we even begin to figure out where home is?" she asked finally. Clara bit her lip, unsure of the answer. But as she watched Luca, a strange sense of certainty settled over her. "He'll show us," she said. "I think he already knows." The next morning, Clara woke to find Luca standing by the door, his hand pressed against the wood as if sensing something beyond it. When she approached him, he turned to her, his expression calm but intent. She felt the familiar wave of communication, this time an urgent pull to move. "He wants us to go," Clara said, turning to Anna, who was already gathering their things. Anna nodded. "Then we go." They set out once again, following Luca's lead as he guided them deeper into the wilderness. He seemed to know exactly where he was going, pausing occasionally to let Clara and Anna catch up. The further they went, the more Clara felt a strange energy in the air, almost like an invisible thread pulling them towards something monumental. By late afternoon, they reached a clearing unlike anything Clara had ever seen. The ground was covered in strange, luminescent plants that pulsed faintly, as if alive. In the center of the clearing stood a massive stone structure, its surface engraved with symbols that glowed faintly in the fading light. Luca walked toward the structure without hesitation, his small frame dwarfed by its towering presence. Clara and Anna followed, their awe mixed with trepidation. "What is this place?" Anna whispered, her voice barely audible. Clara shook her head, unable to answer. She could feel the energy radiating from the structure, a hum that seemed to vibrate in her bones. Luca placed his hand on the stone, and the glowing symbols grew brighter, casting the clearing in an otherworldly light. And then, without warning, the ground beneath them began to tremble. The trembling intensified, sending vibrations through the ground that rattled Clara's legs and made Anna instinctively grab her arm for support. The glowing symbols on the stone structure pulsed in rhythm, growing brighter and brighter until the entire clearing was bathed in their light. Clara's heart pounded as she clutched Luca's hand, watching in awe and fear as the mysterious monument seemed to come alive. Then, with a deep, resonating hum, a section of the stone began to shift. It slid downward, revealing an opening that emanated a soft, golden light. Clara took a step back, her instincts screaming both danger and fascination. "What's happening?" Anna asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Luca turned to Clara, his expression calm but urgent. He tugged her hand, pulling her gently toward the opening. Clara hesitated, glancing at Anna, who shook her head. "No," Anna said firmly. "We don't know what's in there." Clara looked down at Luca, her chest tightening. She felt a ripple of emotion through their bond, reassurance, trust, and something deeper, almost like a promise. "He knows, Mom," Clara said quietly. "I think this is what he's been leading us to." Anna's face tightened with fear. "Clara, we don't even know if it's safe. What if it's a trap?" Clara's gaze didn't waver. "I trust him." Before Anna could protest further, Clara took a deep breath and followed Luca into the glowing opening. The interior of the structure was unlike anything Clara had ever seen. The walls shimmered with a metallic sheen, reflecting light in a way that made the space feel infinite. The air was warm and carried a faint, melodic hum, as though the structure itself was alive. Luca walked ahead, his movements purposeful, as if he knew exactly where to go. Clara followed closely, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and wonder. Behind her, Anna reluctantly entered, her steps cautious and her hand gripping the small flashlight she'd packed, though its beam seemed unnecessary in the luminous space. "What is this place?" Anna murmured, her voice echoing softly. Clara didn't answer. She was too focused on Luca, who had stopped in the center of the room. A circular platform rose from the ground, its surface engraved with the same glowing symbols that adorned the exterior of the structure. Luca stepped onto the platform and turned to face Clara and Anna. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the air seemed to ripple, and a projection materialized above the platform. It was a vast, intricate map of stars, their constellations unfamiliar yet mesmerizing. Clara's breath caught in her throat as she stared at the projection, her mind struggling to comprehend the enormity of what she was seeing. Anna stepped closer, her eyes wide. "Is that space?" Clara nodded slowly. "I think so." Luca reached out, his small hand touching one of the glowing stars. The projection shifted, zooming in on a single point. The star expanded, revealing a planet bathed in golden light, its surface dotted with strange, crystalline structures. Clara felt a wave of recognition, though she didn't know why. "This is where he's from," Clara said, her voice trembling. "This is his home." Anna stared at the projection, her expression a mix of awe and disbelief. "How is this possible? How does he know this?" Before Clara could respond, Luca turned to her, his large, dark eyes filled with an intensity she had never seen before. She felt a sudden rush of emotion through their bond, love, gratitude, and an overwhelming sense of urgency. "He's telling us something," Clara said, her voice breaking. "He needs to go back." Anna's face hardened. "Oh, we can't let him go. We don't know what's out there. We don't know if it's safe." Clara looked at her mother, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, it's not about what we want. It's about what Luca needs. He doesn't belong here. He's been trying to tell us that all along." Anna's hands clenched into fists, her fear warring with her love for her daughter. "And what about you, Clara? What happens to you if he leaves?" Clara's voice trembled. "I don't know. But I can't keep him here if it's not where he's supposed to be." As the argument hung in the air, the structure seemed to respond. The walls shimmered, and the hum grew louder, almost as if the building itself was urging them forward. Luca stepped closer to Clara, placing a hand on her arm. The emotions he sent through their bond were clear. This was his moment, and he needed her support. Anna's shoulders slumped, her resistance crumbling under the weight of the decision. "If this is what he needs," she said quietly, "then we'll help him." Clara nodded, her heart breaking even as she felt a sense of relief. She turned back to Luca and took his hand. "We'll get you home," she whispered. The platform began to hum as Luca touched the symbols on its surface. The map of stars shifted again, focusing on the golden planet. Clara and Anna stepped back as the room filled with light, its intensity growing until it was almost blinding. Luca stood at the center, his small frame glowing with the same otherworldly energy. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the light dimmed, and a soft, melodic tone filled the air. The platform began to rise, carrying Luca with it. Clara's breath caught as she reached out instinctively, her heart screaming for her to hold on to him. "Luca," she cried, tears streaming down her face. He turned to her, his dark eyes locking onto hers. Through their bond, Clara felt one final surge of emotion: love, gratitude, and a promise. He would never forget her. The platform ascended higher, and the light grew brighter until Luca was no longer visible. Clara collapsed to her knees, sobbing, as Anna knelt beside her, wrapping her in a protective embrace. "He's gone," Clara whispered, her voice breaking. "He's really gone." Anna held her tightly, her own tears falling silently. "You did the right thing, Clara. You gave him what he needed." The structure began to dim, its light fading until it was dark and silent once more. Clara and Anna sat together in the clearing, the weight of their loss pressing heavily on their hearts. But even in the darkness, Clara felt a strange sense of peace. Luca was where he belonged, and she had helped him get there. As the first rays of dawn broke through the trees, Clara looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars, was the boy she had called her son. And though the pain of losing him would never fully fade, she knew that their connection would always remain. "Goodbye, Luca," she whispered, her voice carried away by the wind. "I'll always love you."